Briefcase Crimes contains graphic depictions of violent acts, bad jokes, and loud dog noises. It's not intended for all audiences, and listener discretion is advised. Welcome, listeners, to Briefcase Crimes. I'm Hannah, and I'm full of terrifying facts about horrific events.
I'm Liz, and I'm full of morbid curiosity.
Elizabeth.
Yes, Hannah.
We are doing something slightly different today.
I feel like we say that every other episode.
That's true, but you requested this episode.
Yeah.
You saw a TikTok.
Yes.
That piqued your interest.
It was literally like, want to hear a messed up story? Go look up this story. And so I just sent it to Hannah and was like, hey, this maybe? ?
Yeah, so I said, do you want to do this one? And she said yes. And I said, it's not vintage, but although we normally do vintage stuff, that doesn't necessarily mean we only do vintage stuff.
Right.
That being said, we have a disclaimer at the beginning of this episode, or at the beginning of all episodes.
Yes.
As is. I'm going to just right now put a second disclaimer on this. This case is very upsetting. So maybe skip this one if you're, like, afraid.
Yeah. Give it. You could give it a try, and then if it's too much, just quit. You're good.
Yeah. And I was going to say I'll warn before, like, the really upsetting stuff, but I'd just be warning the entire episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so unlike normal, where we're in, like, the 30s or the 50s or whatever, we're in 2006.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So not like yesterday, but...
Exactly. So we talked before about the fact that, like, my brain stopped at 2010. Mm-hmm. So, like, 2006... That's 4 years ago. That's not that long.
Yeah.
But, like, excuse me. Yeah, that's 14 years ago.
Yeah.
Children born in 2006 are in 9th grade now.
Mm-hmm.
So, a while ago, but not quite as long as we usually have. So, our story takes place in 2006 in New Orleans.
Okay. NOLA.
On October 17th, 2006. In the evening, around like 8:30, the New Orleans Police Department got a call from the Omni Hotel. They said there was a man's body on the roof of the parking garage.
Ooh.
Yeah. First slide.
Okay.
We're getting right into it. So this is what I believe is the hotel. If I am wrong, someone who knows better, look in the brief and tell me if this is the hotel, because I had a time finding a picture of the hotel, of the parking garage, anything. This is the only picture I got that I feel is confident that this is that hotel.
Does the hotel not exist anymore?
I don't know. There's like, Omni is like a chain of hotels.
Right.
So it's not, when you look them, I'm not a detective. So digging through, like, Google Images to find a hotel, like, I'm terrified of putting up a picture that is not actually connected to our story.
Right.
So I try really hard to make sure that it's the actual thing, but there's, like, so many different versions of things. Mm-hmm. And also sometimes things look really old and this looks really new. So in some pictures it looks like it's an older building. I don't know. But this is the photo I'm going with. It's in the brief. It's on our social media. If you are from New Orleans or if you know about this crime, please tell me, is this the right hotel? Because I'm afraid it's not.
And then we can fix it if it's wrong.
True. As far as I know, this is an Omni Hotel, and I believe it is in New Orleans. I believe it is the one that this happened at.
Okay.
So the police get there. They see this body. And they're wondering, is this murder? Has someone been murdered up here? Did somebody jump to their death? from like the top of the hotel and land on the, because it's like, apparently it like is close to the terraces of the hotel.
Okay.
Or is this like somebody fell?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is going on here? So their first sort of like mode of investigation is to sort of search the body and see who this person is, and that's going to be where they start. While they're searching the body, they find a note in this man's back pocket.
Okay.
And the note said, at least the beginning of the note said, "This is not accidental." So that was your first clue. He knew they were going to think it was an accident, maybe. So he wanted there to be no bones about it. This was not accidental. So he continues, quote, "I had to take my own life to pay for the one I took."
Okay.
Your face. I wish people could
I
see the
know.
faces you make.
I know. Maybe
That was like
maybe someday we can do like video
the
podcasts.
best example I can give, if you want to know the face Liz just made, is the white guy blinking meme.
That's one of my favorites.
You literally just made that face. Then, further into the note here, so he says, "I had to take my life to pay back the one I took, to pay for the one I took." Then he says, trigger warning, this is upsetting, "If you send a patrol to 826 North Rampart, you will find the dismembered corpse of my girlfriend Addie in the oven, on the stove, and in the fridge, along with full documentation on the both of us and a full signed confession from myself."
Whoa.
I told you, this story is heavy. Heavy, and that TikTok wasn't kidding.
I have to admit, I underestimated. I was like, yeah, sure, okay. It's going to be totally messed up.
I mean, I'm down to
God.
do this. I'm down to do this as many times as you want. Test the validity of these people being freaked out. Yeah, so basically, the TikTok that Liz sent me, did you explain it when it was breaking up on me?
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty simple. It was just like, hey, want to hear something crazy?
Well, it was like, I'm a criminology major and a true crime like buff. I listen to all the podcasts, probably not ours, but I listen to all the podcasts, and no crimes freak me out except this one.
Yeah.
And like, this one doesn't really freak me out as much as it is just like kind of gruesome.
I'm sure that they are probably getting more into like the psychology of it though, and that's probably what freaks them out.
Possibly. The only case that has actually given me the heebie-jeebies and like bit in my brain when I'm walking through my house in the dark is the Richard Chase case. And that was just because he would do this thing.
I don't know this case. Maybe save it.
Well, I'm just going to say this part. So he would do this thing where he would walk up to doors and see if they were unlocked in people's houses. And his brain, he said that he figured if they were unlocked, they were inviting him in.
No.
And one woman said she was in her house and he walked up to her back door and was like rattling the knob and looking at her. And it was locked. So he just left. And like, I think about that.
Did you see the TikTok with the girl in her apartment building?
And the guy climbs in her balcony? Yes. Can we talk about two things in that? Number one, she handled that situation so well. Number two, as we say on this podcast all the time, the neighbors are the MVPs.
Thank God for that woman who didn't even question anything when this poor girl said, "Hey, can I come inside?" She just immediately lets her in. By the way, Scott, it came up on his feed later, his For You page later, and I guess he was reading in the comments or like following up on whatever she had posted. He saw it after me, so it's possible that more had developed. The guy had a string of Christmas lights to tie her up with. Right? No. A second floor balcony. He climbed up to a second floor balcony and just let himself in her unlocked like balcony door.
And she's like telling him to get out. Like, can you please get out of my house? Get out of my house. And he's like, am I your friend?
Yeah.
No.
Freaking creepy.
Yeah. Yes. So, I digress.
Anyway.
This case doesn't freak me out. That was the,
yeah.
That was the crux. Oh, you do know, though, that the Spider-Man creeps me out. Just because of the idea of, like, people living in the house and not knowing, and, like, them pushing on the wall or the ceiling and not knowing that he was pushing back.
Yeah.
Yuck. Yeah. Okay, so the police follow the instructions. They go to 826 North Rampart. I'm going now to back up.
Hannah.
Who are these people? How did we get here?
I'm going to tell you, I was so ready for you to tell me about what was at Rampart Street. And I'm so sad that we're backing up. But I understand. It's the nature of things.
We'll get there.
I know.
And when we do, I want you to tell me if you're still excited when I tell you what all is in there.
Okay.
I remember when we had Brittany and Susan on here, and Brittany was like, "I'm just excited to be here," and I'm like, we'll pull you again after the episode is over.
I don't think we did ever ask her again. I think because we knew the answer.
So, if you go to your next slide, the man that they found dead was Zack Bowen, and the woman in his letter that he wrote to police was Addie Hall. This case is known as the Zack and Addie case.
Okay.
So who are these people? How did we end up in this situation? If this were a movie, this is where the record would scratch and someone would be like, "Yep, bet you're wondering how I got in this situation." But it's not a movie. It's real life, and I hate that it's real life.
Yeah.
So let's start with Addie. Addie's real name is like never, because obviously she wasn't born Addie, like that's a nickname. Addie's name is never like written down anywhere. She's always referred to as Addie, but her tombstone says her name was Adrienne Hall or Adrienne Hall, but everyone called her Addie. She was born in North Carolina. She had a really troubled childhood. She was molested as a child when she was very young, and like a lot of sexual abuse victims, she sort of fell into a cycle of abuse her whole life. Like, she would date men that were abusive, and so she kept falling in with these like awful guys. It is said, I don't know if she had, I think she did have a diagnosis, but she was being medicated at least for bipolar disorder.
Okay.
And she probably had PTSD from being molested.
Yeah.
So she's dealing with a lot of mental health things that are very heavy and hard to handle in the first place. She also drank a lot. And it was said that when she would drink, she would get mean, which happens.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a lot of trauma. Like, no one expects somebody who has like a heavy, heavy past to just be like drinking for fun.
Right.
You know? Not a good time. Moving on to Zack. Zack was from California. He married a woman named Lana, had 2 kids with her, and then to support their family, he joined the army.
Okay.
Thank God, as I was writing this, Ryan has the day off. So while I was writing this, I was like, I have questions. Please come here so I can ask you some questions about the United States military. Because I was very confused. So he joined the military pre 9/11.
Okay.
He did tours of duty in Kosovo, and he did tours of duty in Iraq. He was in pre and post 9/11. He had a lot of really heavy experiences during his service, as a lot of veterans do.
Right.
He saw friends be killed in action, and he also like befriended a little girl, and then her and her entire family were killed in a bombing. That was, some sources say that the bombing was like motivated by the fact that they were friendly with American soldiers.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So he carried a lot of guilt from that. He had a lot of baggage and PTSD from that, understandably.
Yeah, definitely.
Some things also say that his shoes were ill-fitting, so they were like messing up his feet as he was wearing them, his boots, and that he started failing physical exams And so he received during his service a NATO medal and a Presidential Unit Citation for his service. Mm-hmm. So he's like a decorated, awarded member of the armed forces. But he was released with only a general discharge. His commanding officer requested or recommended that he receive an honorable discharge, but he was only given a general discharge. So that is why I was like, Ryan, come here. I'm in confusion. So
I've only ever heard of honorable or dishonorable.
So here's what I learned straight from the man himself, straight from our resident military expert. Mm-hmm. So if you serve your entire contract and then you retire, you are released from your contract, you receive an honorable discharge.
Okay.
If for whatever reason you cannot complete your contracted service, you then receive a general discharge.
Okay.
Ryan claims the only way to get a dishonorable discharge is if you kill someone. Or do something really bad.
Okay.
Usually you are just generally discharged. Now, why does that matter? Why does it matter other than laymen's like us being making assumptions based on that? Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you. When you receive an honorable discharge, you are eligible for VA benefits and you are eligible for the GI Bill.
Oh.
When you receive a general discharge, you are only eligible for VA benefits. Mm-hmm. You are not eligible for the GI Bill.
What's the GI Bill?
Okay. I was going to say, in case you don't know what the GI Bill is.
I don't.
The GI Bill was created during and after World War II. And the idea was our guys have gone over there. They've been paid very little. They have fought for us. They have been injured for us. And so the least we can do is when their service is over and they come home, we will pay for their education.
Oh, okay.
So it's a full ride to college.
Sure.
That is how Ryan went to Penn State and has no student debt.
Nice.
Yes. Very nice. And all he had to do was be a slave for the government for 6 years.
You know, NBD.
Yeah, no problem at all. So, for instance, Ryan's brother developed a brain tumor while he was in the Navy. Mm-hmm. And so he was medically discharged. I'm not sure what, his paperwork says or, if he was eligible for the GI Bill. I'd have to ask. Yeah. But what he did was he got medically discharged, and then he basically went across the hall to where the civilians worked and did the same thing he was doing but got paid civilian money. So that was lucky for him.
Yeah.
Basically he was still in the same place doing the same thing. He just wasn't getting paid peanuts because he wasn't in the Navy anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Zack Bowen was discharged with just a general discharge. So he could go to the VA and get the benefits that you get there. The VA is the Veterans Administration. It's a hospital that provides medical care for veterans. I won't get into the VA and its issues too much because I have a lot of personal feelings about the VA coming from a veteran's home. Mm-hmm. My father was in the Marine Corps, and now I am dating a Navy man. So I have, and my grandfather goes to the VA. He's an Army veteran. I've heard about and dealt with the VA my whole life.
Right.
And so, the VA will help you as long as you don't make enough money. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
Zack Bowen gets out of the Army, and he has PTSD, and he is not honorably discharged, even though his CO, recommended him to be honorably discharged. He's decorated. He's received awards. But he still can't go to college for free like he should have been able to. So he leaves very embittered.
I don't blame him.
I don't either. This is a rough one because a lot happens here that's man, that sucks, but also hey bud.
Yeah.
That's not how we handle this thing.
Right.
Both of them, Addie and Zack, become bartenders at different establishments in the French Quarter of New Orleans.
Okay.
Addie was very bohemian, very artistic. She was a poet. She would ride her bike to work. She very much felt at home in the French Quarter. She felt like that's where she belonged. And obviously, after having such a tumultuous past in North Carolina, New Orleans was a new start for her. It felt like a home for her.
Yeah.
This comes into play later. They met at a market in the French Quarter, and they got to know each other. They started talking. They started dating. Zach's wife, Lana, had left him while he was in the service. That was another part that I'm sure he resented the army for.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why she did that either. Like, I don't know what motivated that, so I have a hard time, like, judging her for that.
Right.
But she left him, she took the kids, so then he moved to New Orleans, and that's where he met Addie.
Mm-hmm.
The two hit it off. They became friends. And in 2004, Hurricane Katrina hit.
Yep.
I was in 6th grade.
Yeah.
I remember this happening. It was all over the news. It was everywhere. It was all over the news for like a year.
Yeah. Because they didn't get very good relief.
No. I remember like all the footage of this. So, for those who don't know, Hurricane Katrina was a Category 5 hurricane that hit New Orleans and decimated it.
Absolutely devastating.
Yes. And it killed thousands of people. There was like a huge death toll. Mm-hmm. And the city didn't bounce back right away. No. The city had a hard time. There was a lot of criticism of the government's response to that and FEMA's response. Oh, I forgot. Go to your next slide. This is Zach during his service. Okay. So there he is in his, I don't know what the Army calls it, dress uniform of some kind. The Navy and the Marines call it dress blues, but I don't know that that's it. And there he is in like his fatigues. Katrina hit. Zach says, I'm going to go stay with Lana and the kids because of course I am. They're not in New Orleans. Like he knows, everybody knew that the hurricane was going to hit. Right. It's not like that comes out of nowhere. Right. So he was planning to go back and stay with his ex-wife and kids. And his ex-wife even said, like, bring your girlfriend. I don't mind. Like, bring her. I don't care. He went to Addie's house. And Addie was like, no, we're going to stay here. Staying here is fine. Ugh. We're going to stay here. And so they did. They stayed in Addie's apartment. And this is where they really bonded and like fell into, by all accounts, like a very deep love. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it was a very traumatic experience, but they sort of flourished afterward. The city was in shambles. There was no electricity. There was, minimal access to food and that kind of clean water, that kind of stuff. But for them, it was sort of like urban camping or something. Yeah. Like they saw it as like a survival experience or like just you don't have to go to work. You don't have to pay bills. You can just hang out, trade booze for food and stories and sing songs and cook over a campfire. If you go back up to the one of the two of them, all of these pictures were taken after Hurricane Katrina. Oh. They drew the attention of like national media outlets. Like the New York Times covered them. I was gonna say, she looked so familiar to me. Yeah. They were covered by like a couple different things because it was like this story of hope, right? Yeah. Hurricane Katrina was a mess, and they are this sort of like shining light in the middle of this broken city. Mm-hmm. It was even like this one thing that I read said that Hall, Addie, became known for flashing her breasts at police.
That's New Orleans, I guess.
Yeah. And so here's the other thing. You have to remember that after the hurricane, there was like a heavy military presence in the city. You had like the government trying to provide relief, so they were basically trucking in like the National Guard and stuff. And that was apparently very triggering for Zach as somebody who has this like military-based PTSD. Sure. Everything's going good. How did we get to
him on a roof
and her in the oven? How did we get there? Oh God. How did we get there? Basically, things got back to normal. And that was sort of the breaking point.
Mm-hmm.
Without, having to return to real life, so to speak, having to, go back to work and pay bills, and you can't just sort of like have a camping trip in the street and hang out. You gotta like go back to real life.
Right.
They start, like, friends said they were arguing constantly. It was like a constant fighting with them. They also started drinking heavily, even more than usual, and doing drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Never a good time.
No.
Friends of Zack said that most of the time that he was with them, he would be complaining about Addie.
Jeez.
Yeah, it sucks. So they thought, what will help? What will help this situation?
Mm-hmm.
Let's get an apartment together. Let's go get an apartment together that's ours.
Mm-hmm.
If you are having relationship trouble, I do not suggest, I highly do not suggest going into a legal contract with each other.
Also, don't have a kid together.
Ugh, yeah.
Kids don't fix failing relationships.
Yeah. This is like the free version, the light version of that.
Yeah.
Like getting an apartment or getting a pet.
Yeah.
Fast forward.
Okay.
Slightly. He died on October 17th, 2006. We're fast forwarding to October 4th,
okay,
2006. Addie Hall, shortly after they moved in, like they hadn't even unpacked all their boxes. Shortly after they moved in, she went to the landlord and she said, I would like to only have my name on the lease because Zack cheated on me.
Okay, did he?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I just know that she said, he cheated on me. I want to only have my name on the lease. And everybody says that, like, this makes sense based on her history. Like, you get one strike.
Yeah.
She's been with too many guys that are low-life scum. And if you're going to cheat, I'm done. We're not living together. You can find somewhere else to live. The landlord said, I'll write something up, like, provisionally, but please try to work things out. Which I think there are some landlords who will not let you, unless you're married, have both your names on the lease.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because of this exact reason.
That would be so hard to enforce, I feel like, because you could just be roommates, and they were roommates.
I think though, if you were like, we're dating and we want both of our names on the thing, they'll be like, nah.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that before.
Yeah.
I know where Scott and I lived before we bought our house. We were both on the lease, even though we weren't married yet.
Yeah, we're both on the lease here.
Yeah.
We also own a car together. We're both on the title of the car. Like, we're in this for the long haul, so...
Yeah. But also, like, you're whatever. Not already having relationship problems.
Yeah, we didn't move and buy a car when we were... If we were ever fighting. We've never really fought.
Yeah.
Like, we do. We squabble, but we don't, like...
Fight. Yeah.
Yeah. I usually am just, like, the instigator of the fighting as well. Any fighting we do. It's stupid things like, why can I never find anything in our kitchen? Oh, it's because you don't know how to put away dishes.
You've told me about this.
Yeah. I'll just be like, where are my KitchenAid attachments? I'll be like, where'd you see them last? I'd be like, in my KitchenAid bowl where the KitchenAid attachments go. And I'll, like, look in my KitchenAid. There'll be, like, beaters for the hand mixer. KitchenAid attachments nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
But, like, if that's the worst thing we fight about.
Yeah.
Then we're in a good place.
Right.
So the landlord was the last person who saw her alive.
Yikes.
Yeah. As per usual, we cannot really tell what happened.
Right.
Other than what Zack says. And Zack was not shy on the details of what happened.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it.
He made a full confession. So, fast forward to the 17th.
Mm-hmm.
Now remember, ma'am, you wanted to know. You're the one who wanted to know what was in the house.
Yep. That was me.
So I will say that the house that they lived in was above, it was an apartment above this place called the Voodoo Spiritual Temple.
Okay.
Which was founded by a woman called Priestess Miriam with her then husband, Priest Oswin Chamani.
Mm-hmm.
That was founded in 1990. And they were in that building until 2016 when there was a fire and they moved elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So this was an active voodoo temple during this murder. Mm-hmm. Which, of course, led to all kinds of things where people were like speculating that the dark qualities of voodoo possessed him, and that's why this all happened.
Yeah, right. Okay.
It was just like another log on the fire, basically.
Right.
Police went to the house. They got the landlord. They got the keys. They opened the door. Mm-hmm. They found unopened boxes, and they realized that the air conditioning was set to 60 degrees and was on full blast.
Okay.
So it was very cold.
Yeah. In
the house. It was like they described it like a meat locker. This is your trigger warning. The next segment here is what's in the house, and it's very upsetting. So skip ahead if that's not something you want to hear. Mm-hmm. Elizabeth, you don't get to skip ahead.
That's okay.
You live here.
I asked for this.
You did. So they didn't smell anything. The bathroom was clean. But the kitchen and the walls were covered in large writing with silver spray paint.
Okay.
If you go to your next slide.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So all over the walls, he had written things like total failure, I loved her, call Lana Bowen, his ex-wife.
I'm trying to see what the one says, the help me stop the pain?
I think so. He also had written look in the oven, and then on the oven he wrote don't
look.
So a little counterintuitive. But police did look because they had to, and what they found was a pot on one of the burners, which is in that picture. Mm-hmm. Inside that pot was a human head with no hair, burned beyond recognition. In the oven, there was a large roasting pan that had arms and legs in it. In another pot on the stove, there were hands and feet. Investigators believed that they saw seasoning on the limbs, but thankfully, and on the counter next to the stove, there were cut up potatoes and carrots.
Ew.
Based on the autopsy, she was not consumed. There was no cannibalism. This is often referred to as like the New Orleans cannibalism case as well. Mm-hmm. In the refrigerator, in a large garbage bag, was her torso, and then they found her journal. And in her journal, he had written an 8-page confession.
Wow.
Yeah. So her journal let them into, like, both of their mindsets, you know.
We love when there's a diary.
I love a diary. Except if it's the killer's diary. I love it, but I'm also confused by it.
Yeah.
So.
This is freaking wild.
I told you.
Yeah.
So I'm now going to read an excerpt from his confession.
Okay.
Again, trigger warning, this is very graphic and gruesome. Mm-hmm. He wrote, quote, "Today is Monday, 16th of October, 2 a.m. I killed her at 1 a.m., Thursday, the 5th of October. I very calmly strangled her. It was very quick." Then later he says, quote, "Halfway through the task, I stopped and I thought about what I was doing. The decision to halt the first idea and move to plan B, the crime scene you are now in, came after a while. I scared myself, not by the action of calmly strangling the woman I've loved for 1.5 years. And then," this is in quote, like in parentheses, I'm not sure if he wrote this word or if they have given this word instead. Mm-hmm. Parentheses, "desecrating," back to his words, "her body, but by my entire lack of remorse. I have known for forever how horrible of a person I am. Ask anyone. And decided to quit my jobs and spend the $1,500 cash I had being happy until I killed myself. So that's what I did. Good food, good drugs, good strippers, good friends, and any loose ends I may have had. I didn't contact any of my family, so that'll explain the shock. And had a fantastic time living out my days. It's just about time now. Unquote.
Jeez.
So he strangled her, and then afterward he sexually assaulted her corpse. Then he sort of just like went about his life for a little bit while she was dead, while he tried to figure out what to do with her. He put her in the bathtub, and with a hacksaw and knives he dismembered her. And then he decided he would, I guess, cook or boil the remains so that they would be easier to dispose of. The thought there being the muscle would rend from bone easier, I suppose. During this time when he was just sort of like going about his business, people that knew him said he seemed like out of sorts. And when they asked him what happened, where Addie was, he said that she left him and went back to North Carolina.
Oh.
So some people said that this was really shocking,
right?
Because she loved New Orleans so much. Other people said she had bipolar disorder. Maybe she's having a manic episode. And she's just driving.
That's true.
You know?
Yeah.
It happens. During a manic episode, weird things happen.
Yep. I have a family member with bipolar, and her mother passed away last year. And we were real afraid that she was just going to drive somewhere. And, like, because she was not okay. Yeah. And we were, like, genuinely, she kept talking about she was going to move. She was going to move and, like, just drive. And we were like, oh, boy.
Yeah, please don't do that.
Yeah.
I saw a thing where someone said, it was on TikTok, when they're having, because first of all, we always say this, just because you're bipolar doesn't mean you have manic tendencies.
Right.
And you can have manic tendencies and not be bipolar.
There's so many kinds of bipolar disorder.
Yes. My anxiety disorder causes manic tendencies.
ADHD can cause manic tendencies. Like,
yeah.
I think there's this label on the word manic, like this scary connotation around it, but it really isn't necessarily. Like, a manic episode can be as little as just like cleaning your house tip to toe, like, you know, stem to stern in one day. Like, manic does not mean bad.
I was going to say, sometimes when I feel like I'm being very productive, I have to stop and take stock and be like, am I very motivated and productive, or am I manic today? Am I having like a manic episode?
Yeah. And, you know, it's one of those things where I feel like we as Americans are not super educated on mental health, and so a lot of people don't realize that mania can be something like that.
Some of us didn't even realize we had an anxiety disorder until we met our best friend.
Hey.
Raise your hand if it's you, Elizabeth.
It me.
Elizabeth, who just thought she lived in a haunted house.
Listen, there were ghosts in my house, and I stand by that.
I know. We were on a trip. And we were watching A Crime to Remember, and I felt like just generalized anxiety, and I was like, would you mind if we like sort of slept in the same bed, because we were in a different city? I was like just feeling anxious, and Liz was like, yeah, that's no problem. I'm like, I just kind of have like anxiety. I sort of am feeling like the heebie-jeebies. And Liz was like, oh my god, wait a second.
Yeah.
I didn't
like
realize.
That's anxiety?
Yeah.
My whole life.
Well, you're learning. You're growing.
Learning. I'm still learning.
You're becoming a more educated, more well-rounded you.
Thank God for that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of the end of the crime.
Right.
Obviously, they couldn't, like, bring him to trial. He was dead, right?
Yeah.
However, that's not really the end of the story. It gets a little bit, there's a twist.
Okay.
There's a little twist here. So there was a documentary about this case.
Okay.
And in that documentary, a very close friend of the couple named Margaret Sanchez is in this film. And she cries and she talks about how they were such best friends and this was so shocking. In 2012, Margaret Sanchez and her then boyfriend, who she knew as Alan, but whose real name was Terry Speaks,
okay,
went into a Bourbon Street gentleman's club and they lured a dancer back to their house for a, quote, private performance.
Okay.
They said, we'll give you this money if you come back home with us.
Right.
I don't know how much of this Margaret Sanchez was involved in. However, the dancer's name was Jaren Lockhart. She was taken back to their home, stabbed in the chest. Her body was then dismembered and thrown over a bridge.
Okay.
Her remains washed up on several different Mississippi Gulf Coast beaches. Rough.
Yeah.
She didn't realize at the time because she knew her boyfriend as, I assume it's his last name, Alan. She knew him as Terry Allen. His name was Terry Speaks. And he was a registered sex offender from North Carolina.
Oh, yikes. North Carolina.
I know. The worst. He had violated his probation. He had like a long history of criminal behavior that she didn't know anything about. He paid for like her everything. He took great care of Margaret. That's how she knew him as.
Yeah.
However, when police started finding Jaren Lockhart's remains, they went to the surveillance video of the club and they found Speaks and Sanchez talking to her and her leaving with them.
Right.
So they were arrested. Sanchez said she was aware of her death when it was broadcast on the local news.
Okay.
So that leads me to wonder how much she was involved in.
Right.
But she said that, quote, I felt so bad for her family because I had a friend. My friend was Addie Hall. She was cut up and was cooked, and her boyfriend jumped off a hotel. She said, I feel betrayed, heartbroken. I mean, my life was, I'm going to censor this, when I met him, and he took very good care of her, so she just, like, trusted him. If you go to your next slide, on the right, that's her in the documentary, and on the left, that's the news coverage of her, Terry Speaks, and Jaren Lockhart, the victim. So you have a person who's involved in the case only in the fact that she's a friend, who then is involved in another case where somebody is dismembered. Like,
yeah.
How bizarre.
Very.
It gets even more bizarre.
Okay.
So you know that places like New Orleans, Gettysburg, Salem, all of those places.
Haunted.
And what do they have in common? Ghost tours.
Yep. I knew. I knew right where you were going with that.
And just like, so there is a very good article in Medium. I always end up tagging Medium in the brief because they just have really good true crime articles. But there's a very, very good sort of look at this case and our fascination with true crime. So I am obviously a person who likes true crime. I consume a lot of true crime, and I am aware that it is kind of messed up. But there's a morbid curiosity in every human being.
Yeah.
We like to, some people don't get it. Some people, my mother, doesn't understand why anybody would want to read this stuff. Doesn't understand why anybody would want to hear any of this.
Right.
But everybody has something. Everybody has a weird thing that other people think is morbid that they are interested in.
Yeah.
But that can be really problematic, which is another reason why I think we feel more comfortable handling vintage crime.
Yeah.
Because we're a little more removed from it. These ghost tours and these ghost hunting shows are all over this house. So I told you that in 2016 there was a fire, and the the priestess Miriam moved her operation to a different building. So since then, a woman, she goes by Bloody Mary, but her name is Mary Milan.
Okay.
Quote, Mary Voodoo Queen Milan. She leased the building. She has set it up as a haunted museum and tour. And so...
I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen her. I'm familiar with this case because I, especially at the beginning of quarantine, was like obsessed with the show Paranormal Lockdown. I own every season of Paranormal Lockdown and Paranormal Lockdown UK because I just bought the digital versions on Amazon and just like binged it. So I now own all of this. So if you go to your next slide, on the left, that is Nick and Katrina from Paranormal Lockdown. They went to this house. On the right, that woman, blonde woman, is Bloody Mary. On the left at the bottom, that Zack and Addie poster, that is from the documentary. And on the right, that Rampart Street murder house, BuzzFeed Unsolved went here.
Okay.
So I have seen a couple different people go to this house. I've seen this house in its entirety. And Bloody Mary is in both of those things. She's in the BuzzFeed one. She's in the Paranormal Lockdown one. A lot of people had backlash, obviously, about her opening a museum.
Yeah, that's just kind of icky.
Yeah, partly because she kind of like kitsched it up a little bit. So if you go through the next 3 slides here.
Oh, please.
Yeah, so all the appliances are still the appliances, all of that. So as far as I know, she's a practicing like voodoo practitioner. I don't know if the money on the stove and the booze on the stove is something to do with voodoo. That is not something I know anything about. But she basically got some backlash from this. And apparently, I don't remember, I'd have to rewatch them, but in the Paranormal Lockdown and maybe the BuzzFeed Unsolved, but I think I read the Paranormal Lockdown one, all this like kitschy stuff was gone. Like the dolls and the blood splatters and stuff.
Yeah.
Were all gone. Probably because she got so much like flack for this.
Yeah, that's not okay.
She kind of defends herself saying like, it's dumb to say that this didn't happen here. And people want to see it. People want to know. And I guess on her website, it doesn't directly mention the case anymore. But that's still on the itinerary when you go to visit.
Right.
So yeah, people have a lot of ideas about what caused this to happen. Was it, voodoo magic? Was it the dark spirits from the voodoo temple downstairs? Or was it an ex-soldier with PTSD dealing with a girlfriend with her own mental health issues who just snapped?
Yeah.
At this point, I would like to say, as a PSA, if you are someone who is dealing with PTSD and you are a member of the armed forces, you can call the Veterans Crisis Hotline, which is available 24/7, and I will have the number in our description. That is something that is really important to me. 1 in 4 active duty members of the military show signs of a mental health condition that needs to be treated. The 3 most primary are PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and TBIs, which are traumatic brain injuries. We are not, as a country, taking care of the men and women of our armed forces.
No.
And that is a mistake that we are making as a whole.
Yep.
So I wanted to make sure that if we took a lesson from this, that is the lesson that we took.
It's a good lesson.
And that's the end of the story. How do you feel?
It's just sad. It's just such a sad story.
It's not...
Like,
It doesn't freak me out.
No, I don't feel freaked out. I do feel like I feel like maybe the girl who made the TikTok maybe like felt freaked out as like a girlfriend, like you never know what can happen, kind of like depending on who you're dating. Like you and I are pretty secure in the fact that our significant others aren't gonna kill us.
Hope not.
So maybe like that's where she was coming from.
I don't know. But if you find any more of those and you're interested, please send them to me. That goes for you guys too. If you have a case that you've heard about but you don't know anything about, or you're scrolling through true crime TikTok and you find one, just send it to us. We're on TikTok. You could just like message it to us.
Yeah. Or like just tag us in the comments.
Oh yeah. I freaking loved having a prompt this week.
Yeah.
That I could just like, okay, this is the one I'm doing, and not like having to figure it out myself.
It can be hard to like narrow it down. I'm
really
learning that with the monthly mysteries. I'm learning how hard it is.
Sometimes there's ones where I'm like, oh yeah, we'll do this, and then as I get into it, I'm like, I cannot make that an hour-long episode.
Yes. Yes.
So we have talked about in the future, if and when we start a Patreon, doing like bite-sized ones for that'll be like a Patreon exclusive, that are ones that are maybe like in a live stream or something,
right,
where we can tell stories that don't necessarily have to be an hour long.
Maybe, like, we'll see if we get there.
We're making slow progress, but we're making progress. We have I'm very impressed with us for keeping this up.
Oh yeah.
Like, well, just because like we started it and then we had like that big break.
Yeah.
Had that big break, and then we were like, yeah, let's like do it again. Let's get it back rolling.
Yeah.
And the fact that we've just like stuck to a schedule, that we've got things like pretty automated at this point. I mean, editing still kills me. But one day when we're making more money, if anyone wants to edit, I would give you a kiss right on the mouth. Would you like to talk about what we're reading and what we're recommending?
Once again, I am not reading anything, but I will recommend something. I've pulled up my book list. And this book that I'm recommending, it's called Frontal Matter. Glue Gone Wild. It's by Suzanne Samples, which is somebody who went to Scott's high school.
Oh.
Like a couple years apart from him.
Wow.
And it is a memoir of her life as she was diagnosed with a rare type of brain cancer that typically only appears in men like in their late 50s and older.
Wow.
And she got it at like 19 or 21, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. It's kind of like a journal. So, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. Her talking about like her going through all of her treatment and stuff. So nonfiction, as per usual with my stuff. But
I love a memoir though.
Yeah, and literally like it's somebody Scott knows.
Yeah, that's wild.
So, yeah. So that's what I want to recommend today.
Okay. I finished the Half-Drowned King that I was reading, and I went on bookshop.org, which we will talk about later, and I purchased the next 2 books in the series. So this is in a saga called the Golden Wolf Saga. I've started reading the next one, which is called The Sea Queen.
Okay.
A reminder, these books are Iron Age Norway, talking about Norsemen, and our main character's name is Ranvald Eystein.
Wow.
They all have very, very Norse names, but his name is Ranvald Eystein, and his father was killed when he was young, so his mother remarried. His stepfather is supposed to be holding his lands that he will inherit when he becomes a man. He being Ranvald, goes off raiding with a man named Solvi Huntjofsson, and Solvi tries to kill him.
Classic.
He tries to kill him. He drops him into the water, and right as he's about to be in ran the sea goddess's court for eternity. After he has had a vision of a golden wolf, that's why it's the Golden Wolf Saga, he is pulled from the water, so that's why they call him half drowned. And it's basically, the first book is about him trying to reclaim his lands from his stepfather, and so now we're like 5 years in the future for the sequel. It's very good.
Yeah.
There's also like a romance element because his younger sister meets and falls in love with Sölvi Hunthjofsson, the man who tried to kill him. Ugh, I was reading it in bed one night and I was like slapping Ryan's leg, like, oh my gosh, you'll never believe the twist. Like, just involving him in things he doesn't care about.
You know, but he's like, that's nice, honey.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading.
Cool. Is that what you're recommending also?
Sure.
Okay.
Liz texted me the other day and says, do you realize that you recommended Pride and Prejudice 3 weeks in a row? And I said, well, it took me 3 weeks to read Pride and Prejudice.
I was like, fair enough.
Oh, I have also now watched the 2005 Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
I thought it was very good. I did critique it a little bit because I had just read the book. So I was like, well, that's not how it is in the book.
Oh, well,
but
yeah.
I thought it was very sweet. And that's what's happening. So,
well, good.
Elizabeth.
Yes.
Where can the people find us?
We are Briefcase Crimes across all social media platforms, including Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. You can listen to full episodes anywhere that you listen to podcasts, as well as on YouTube, even though we're a little bit behind on that, but we're getting there.
That's what I was going to say.
It's okay. If you would like to support us monetarily, you can buy us a coffee on coffee.com/Briefcase Crimes. Or you can purchase any of our book recommendations, our books that we want to read, or books that we have mentioned during our episodes, or any other book that you want using our bookshop.org affiliate link, which is in our link tree. They support local bookstores by donating 75% of the profits to them, and they support us as well by giving us a small percent as well. That link, as well as all the other links, are always in our description and our bios everywhere you look.
Excellent work, Elizabeth.
Thanks.
You get to react the entire episode, and then at the end we make you work.
Yeah. I know. It's okay. I'll take it.
Would you like to wrap this up?
Yes. Thank you so much for listening.
And we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye. So happy 2021, everyone.